this is Judy, and I'm the Director of Outreach of HYPIA. And today we are going to interview and talk to Jonathan from Sweden. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, my name is Jonatan Haile, and I'm from Sweden. I was born in Sweden. My parents came from Eritrea during the 70s. And so I was born and raised in northern Sweden in a city called Umeå. And then we moved to a smaller town where I was raised also there. And as a child, I would say that I was the more like, how can I say, mm, a bit shy and sitting for myself and reflecting stuff and
Yeah.
yeah, and all these things. And languages was not maybe what the thing would think of me with a lot of languages, because I was more into math, and also my
Oh.
sister was more talkative, so she was more like, they thought, oh well, she's the language person, you're the math person. So,
Mm-hmm.
but then somewhere around when I went to sixth grade in school, we could choose another language apart from
Yeah.
Swedish and English that people learning here. And I started to study Spanish because the teacher was amazingly fun and all this.
Mm.
So, and then I found out that I really liked it and I enjoyed it and I had fun on the class. And it was easy for me to remember words. It was like a
Yeah.
play with games, all these things. So, and then from that, I understood that I really like learning languages.
Wow. So you speak Swedish as your native language and English, Spanish, and what other languages do you speak?
Yeah, so I also speak Hungarian, and I was living 6 years in Hungary. I
Yeah.
did medical school there abroad,
Yeah.
we studied English program with a lot of
Mm-hmm.
international students. So it was a really perfect environment to practice different languages.
Yeah.
Although at that time when I was studying, I didn't speak that much of language that I speak now, but Spanish was my favorite subject when I was in school. So I really enjoyed talking Spanish to the Spanish students in Hungary with
Mm-hmm.
me at the medical school. Yeah, so I learned Hungarian in Hungary. Most of the students of the international program never really learned the language because it's very difficult, and it's
Yeah.
also, many of them were thinking that we're studying here and then we go back to our country, so why would we bother
Mm-hmm.
learning the language? But learning Hungarian was like a big game changer for me.
Mm.
I see it as two different epochs. Like when I was living in Hungary, the first 2 years when I didn't speak the language, and then the
Yeah.
last 4 years when I really spoke the language. It was a completely different world of living in
Wow.
a city or country.
So you say it was a different experience because you were able to communicate with locals, or which aspect?
Yeah, partly that, of course, but
Yeah.
also like Hungarians, many of them were not speaking English that well,
Yeah.
and it's like in Central Europe, so it's like 7 countries around Hungary, and none of them would understand Hungarian language because it's a completely different language,
Mm-hmm.
actually. Um, and Me coming there as a foreign student, learning the language to a higher level would maybe make a they do like a surprise factor, that they would be, oh,
Yeah.
you speak Hungarian, and then I think they felt like that I'm like one of them, because
Yeah.
language has this strong power, as
Exactly.
getting closer to another person
Yes. Yes.
that you
Yes.
wouldn't do by speaking to them in English, for example.
Exactly. That's what I live for. Like basically, there's this connection that is created through languages, and if you speak their language, it's a completely different feeling. The connection that you make is deeper, and you can't do this with English, as you
Mm.
said. And yeah, so you went to Hungary and then you learned Hungarian. And what was the most difficult part of learning Hungarian?
Wow, it was just to start learning to make a sentence that was so hard,
Mhm.
because it's a completely different grammar. They have a
Oh,
lot of cases, I think 18 cases, and
wow.
to just like, one thing is the vocabulary, because it's also new vocabulary, a lot of words that you don't know. Although they have some loan words from other languages,
Yeah.
but still, it's a lot of new words. But then to
Mm.
just form a sentence, that was so hard, and that's why I think most people just gave up, because they said like, it's too difficult. Like, why do I bother? I can just speak English and hang around with the international students in my own
Yeah.
bubble.
Yeah. Yeah. Then, okay, Hungarian
But
language was
yeah,
hard to
so
learn.
but it
Go ahead.
yes, actually, we had a really good, funny teacher there where I was studying. It was like Hungarian, like medical Hungarian. It was for us to learn some medical sentences, talk to the patients. And the teacher, Hungarian teacher, Gabor was named, and he formed a triangle in his like shape like this. One of the
Hmm.
base with, look, how can I say, the tip upside, or on the other triangle where the tip is down. No? And he was writing two different triangles, showing like that some languages are easy in the beginning when you learn it to make a sentence, and then the the more you learn, you will see that there's so big varieties, and you feel that
Yeah.
you will never really be able to grasp it because there's so much of
Mm.
it. And he said that Hungarian is the opposite. To start with is so difficult. The base is just so hard, but once you learn it more and more, you will see that it's not as bad as you would think in the beginning. They
Mm.
speak. There's not that many dialects at all, and yeah, it's not like with other countries where they have varieties of their language. For example, of Arabic dialects or
Yeah.
Spanish that is spoken in Spain or Latin America and all this.
Mm. Wow. So Hungarian language was hard to learn, but you managed to master it. And I'm also curious about Hungarian culture. What is your favorite part about Hungarian culture?
Wow. Yeah. Well, I would say was also partly affected by the fact that I was in a student city,
Yeah.
like student town. You feel this completely different vibe and environment
Yeah.
there to a bigger city, right? But the openness of the people, especially when I learned Hungarian, they were so welcoming, and yeah, I was also very wanted to go into to the culture, like assimilate and integrate and all this, and I guess they also felt the same
Hmm.
enthusiasm back. Find somebody who is interested in that. Um, so yeah, I would say that they were also like the simplicity. Sometimes it's not that much thing that you need to be able to connect with a person. The humor, I love the way the Hungarian humor very good.
Hmm.
Um, something like that, I would say. And I had a band. We played a music band. We played Latin American Cuban music. I also love
Oh.
this kind of music. So I met through friends. They had these bars where you people would sit with a guitar, and I went there with my guitar once, and I met some new friends there. And then there was one other guy from Venezuela who married to a Hungarian woman who started this band called Calle del Mundo, and we played a lot in different restaurants and bars and on the street, and it was such a nice time we had. It was not hard to find places where you could do have a concert. They would never really ask like, "Who are you? Where did you play before?" or "Give me proof that you're good." Not nothing like that. It was maybe partly, as you say, because it was a smaller town that we talk about, university town. It was this openness, like not this inclusivity,
Um,
including everybody. I would say.
oh.
Uh,
So you studied medicine in Hungary, and do you work as a doctor now?
yes. So I work as a medical doctor here in Sweden in a hospital outside Stockholm, in internal medicine.
Oh.
So at work at the hospital, and it's both in the emergency and during the patient ward. So it's quite broad that we have different cases and patients. All this, and it involves a lot of patient communication.
Yeah.
So that's one of the main things that I like about the job is the communication with the patient, the
Hmm.
interactions, right, that you can get, and the impact you can have in a person's life. And
Yeah.
my language knowledge has really also helped a lot, especially when it comes to the interaction with the patient, because we all know that um, uh, have not being able to express yourself and as a patient, and also not understand the patient as a doctor, uh, it makes it harder to get, first of all, of course, the diagnosis correct, but
Hmm.
also to get out the most important things, that of the symptoms and worries and all these things, that just saying simple words in their language might really make a big difference when it comes to
Yeah.
them opening up, or understanding that some kind of
Mm.
feeling that it will be fine, or something, that you're in
Mm.
a foreign country, or you're a country that we don't master the language, but you feel some kind of trust, right? It can be also
Yeah.
way to bond, also to feel that through language.
Oh. So which languages do you speak at work?
So yeah, well, at work, well, we speak Swedish, obviously, with my colleagues and patients, but they have a lot of patients also that don't speak that well Swedish, or don't speak Swedish at all. So we have Sweden is a high population of people from, no, immigrants, people from other countries that moved in here, and so depends on where I was also previously working when I was doing my rotation as a medical
Hmm.
doctor. As I was doing 3 months in the infectious disease clinic, where in Stockholm here, and there were a lot of patients from who didn't speak Swedish. So at those 3 months, they really asked me, "Oh, Jonathan, could you please talk to this patient about this thing?" Or because maybe they were not being able to have an interpreter right there for that moment for more simple stuff or something. And then I remember I really practiced a lot of, I used a
Mm.
lot of my languages. So it was Spanish,
Yeah.
was Russian. I think I even had Hungarian also, although it's not as common, right? Yeah, that's it. Tigrinya, well, my parents are from Eritrea, so I speak Tigrinya also. I've
Oh.
spoken it at home, but
Yeah.
I don't read. I cannot read or write. And my Tigrinya, I would say, is, I mean, if by comparing myself to my parents, it will never feels, I never be as good as their Tigrinya, but still I can talk. But one thing is to talk to a
Mhm.
person, like a regular conversation. Another thing is to have like a specific uh, medical vocabulary, or talking to a patient is a different story, right? But yeah, so but I think I would say Russian has been very useful language,
Oh.
because I maybe didn't tell you so far, but I was, after when I went back to Sweden to work as a doctor, I started to learn Russian, and I got inspired to learn Russian because there is an artist called Vladimir Vysotsky.
Hmm.
He was a very famous Russian troubadour, played guitar, and he was an actor. He did a lot of things, and it's like a big figure in the Soviet history and all this Russian culture. So I liked his voice, although at that time I didn't understand what he was singing about, but I got curious. So I just listened to his songs, and I started to learn by myself the alphabet. And then I took classes online, Russian
Wow.
classes from a teacher from Ukraine. And then I went a lot to language cafes, like Russian language, Swedish language exchange. So I got it to a good level of Russian. So now I also
Wow.
speak that since several years ago. But that's have
So
been also
mm,
useful.
culture was what you made you study Russian culture.
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, and many times it's also through music, because as I also play guitar and sing, and I get this kind of curiosity through the sounds, how it sounds. I really like
Yeah.
the really like deep voice and the sounds of the Russian language, how he sings, and
Yeah.
I wanted to imitate that. And what does this mean? Or, is, you go into different worlds, like different.
Yeah.
You learn languages.
I think interest in music and having a bit of musical talent is something that we share as polyglots. Some polyglots do, and people that I've interviewed so far, including myself, we have something or passion for music. And for instance, I used to play the piano and I have perfect pitch. And yeah, that's why I think it's easier for me to mimic accents and learn a new language and speak like a native. Yeah, I think it has some musical influence.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, I agree with you.
yeah. And also, so we talked about your career as a doctor, and another interesting thing about you is that you organize polyglot events in Sweden. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, that's correct. It's
Yeah.
all. I mean, my whole thing with the polyglot community started way back, maybe 2021. I found on YouTube. videos from Polyglot Gathering, those conferences that they had. And during the pandemics, they was not. It was only online, and I really enjoyed it. I think you have the same story with the Polyglot Gathering. How you came up with this? I started to go there, and then 2022, I went to the real gathering in Poland, Teresin, and there I met some Swedish polyglots that also live in Stockholm. So
Oh.
after the gathering, we started to meet regularly, maybe 4 times a year. We went to different restaurants, eating food for different cultures and countries, and then we just talked to each other like about our the next language we're learning or some just our thoughts about language learning. And we could talk so long time. We always had
Mm.
a lot of things to talk about. And then we met new Swedish polyglots at the 2023 gathering in Teresin. So more people from Stockholm started gatherings, but we were still like about 6 to 8 people every time. And then beginning of this year, I thought, why don't we start a community here
Mhm.
more for more people than just those who were at the Polyglot gathering. So I thought of the Meetup, the app Meetup, where they have you can organize different events or communities with like-minded people. So I started this group called Stockholm Polyglot Meetup Group. It was just like
Mm.
I just wrote Stockholm Polyglot and the meetup we followed, and
Yeah.
our first event was in the end of February. And first I thought that we are going to go to a cafe where I usually have
Mhm.
gone to those language exchange, all these things. But they said that we have to pay a certain fee per hour and you cannot move between chairs. And I said, no, that's not really what we want. So
Mhm.
I just went to a pub, an Irish pub close to that cafe. And I said, well, tomorrow we have to have a place for our event. And he said, okay, how many people? 25 people, you can have 25 seats. Okay. So we're in the same room as another company of people having a birthday party. But when 25 people showed up for the first event, the idea was that people would write their name on the name tag and the
Mhm.
languages to speak. And then I had questions for different levels for A, B, and C level. And I got help also from ChatGPT to generate some good questions to talk about. And then I just made people rotate, like talk to each other using those
Wow.
different questions. And some people might not know what level they are in a language, but then they would just look at the questions for A and B and C level, and they would find out if they could answer those questions. And then they would just look at each other at the name tag and the languages, and then they would practice and talking, answer these questions. And then they had to rotate. So I had a bicycle horn that I bought like to make a really loud sound that they should rotate. And it was really fun. So we did it for
Hmm.
like 2 or 3 hours, and people were staying until late. But then I found out that it was too loud, and you have to shout to each other, and like they
Yeah.
sore throat afterwards. So we have to find a better place for us. Then I found a bar in another part of Stockholm where they have another event for called Blah Blah Language Exchange. I don't know,
Mhm.
it's famous all over the world. Maybe you have been to some of those events, but yeah, they have some kind of language exchange there. And I went to that event that they had, but I found out that there were people from the whole world, but they were speaking English to each other all the time. So I thought, why don't we do our event and doing it with different languages? So I went to the bar owner and he said, yeah, you can come and use this room that we have, the karaoke room,
Mhm.
but you can use it for your events. So I had microphones, I had loudspeakers, I had TV screens for just our group, and it could take up to 80 people that room. So the following events we've been there, and
Wow.
it's getting more and more bigger group. And we had the last event was this week on Thursday, and it was about 45 people, almost 50 people who came.
Wow.
So we did it similar with I got also help from the group of Swedish, one of them who were in the polyglot gathering, and we tried to do similar way as it was at the gathering polyglots. We have quiz,
Mhm.
like a language cultural quiz, and also music quiz. I put some songs that they have to guess the language,
Wow.
as we have done in the gathering, and we have language tables also. And I also do in the beginning of every event a small presentation to welcome the people and
Mhm.
to tell them the concept about polyglots, because many people might not even know what it is or what never heard the word, even though they might speak several languages.
Yeah.
And I also make a bit advertisement about the Polyglot Gathering on my presentation for people who have not heard about it before.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you're giving me some good ideas because there's some events in Montreal, but in Korea and Seoul, I don't think there are any polyglot events, so that's something that I would like to work on. And
Yeah,
yeah,
it is
it's a good
great
idea.
because there's so many people here, like 2 million people in Stockholm almost, and I'm sure that there's so many people. We have a lot of people, expats, a lot of expats here, who might speak several languages, but still don't speak Swedish because maybe, as you say, like they work in a big company or where they use English and they don't maybe see that they need the Swedish language, although they would like to. And that's also, like I would say, maybe 70% of the group are of my polyglot group are expats. We also have
Yeah.
Swedish people who are like learning languages, but yeah, it's a mix. Um, yeah, and we also well, I had a talk on last polyglot gathering in Prague about this group that we formed, the Stockholm
Yes.
Polyglots,
Yes.
and yeah, so and after 1 month when we had this have had this group meeting, I got also a message from a TV producer, and they're making a program about language learning, and
Wow.
they came to film our event.
Wow.
Actually, they are making a program called Learning Spanish in 1 month. So the main character
Hmm.
in the program had to learn Spanish for 1 month just by immersion and practice a lot. And then they took that person to our polyglot evening, where he sat at the a Spanish language table to practice. So they recorded him sitting there, and also, yeah, recorded some parts of our event that showing that there is something called polyglot. What is a polyglot and all these things. So it will come on in autumn sometime on online on that program, and also maybe on Swedish television also. So
Wow.
yeah, it's exciting that we can
So the
make
concept
more.
of polyglot, it's not that well known in Sweden?
I wouldn't say it is. No, I don't think it's like when I many people don't even know what it is. Uh,
Mm.
Maybe if we say multilingual, people would know more,
Yeah.
but polyglot
Yeah.
less, I would say.
Yeah. But
Uh,
Swedish people are they almost bilingual? English, Swedish?
yeah, kind of. I would say like uh, we learn it, not only learn it in school or from early age, but also many, like if you go watch TV, there are a lot of programs and movies, like series from USA or England or English speaking programs, and also uh, the language are quite similar sounds.
Yeah.
And for example, when you go watch a movie, you we have subtitles, so you hear the original language, how it sounds and all
Yeah.
this. So I would say, yeah, the Swedish people usually speak English at a higher level
Mm.
by default, almost by living here and going to Swedish schools.
Okay. And one interesting thing that you mentioned before the interview is that Swedish people don't really find the incentive to learn foreign languages because of several reasons. And could you explain more about that, please?
Yeah, that's something I myself was thinking about, that why what it could be. I don't know. That's my own thoughts, but I've also been active on different language learning or practicing apps, like for example Tandem, and it was interesting
Yeah.
because one of the Tandem founders has also been presenting at the Polyglot Gathering, and I also talked to him about these thoughts. That is interesting to see. They showed also the statistics on where people from in which country people mostly use the Tandem app, and it was a
Hmm.
lot in, for example, Mexico and Russia and Ukraine and all some countries, and many of them wanted to learn English to be able to uh, get a better job or be able to work abroad, or yeah,
Hmm.
improve their chances or possibilities of career possibilities.
Hmm.
Whereas it's not really the same thing here in Sweden. First of all, people already speak English very well, and a lot of people come to Sweden to work here. And of course, some people are also going abroad from Sweden, but still, I don't think that there is that kind of incentive to learn English. First of all, because they already speak English, and also that
Hmm.
that uh, yeah, that's what I think. At least that might be one reason to why the whole thing of learning language, because they think that it will benefit from a career perspective. It's not
Yeah.
really there as in other countries. Oh, yeah. What do you think about
Um,
that too? Have you seen
yeah.
similar thoughts?
Well, I've never thought about it from that perspective. That Swedish people, I know I've heard from Swedish people that they don't really leave the country because they already have a good life in Sweden. But I've
Mm.
never associated that with language learning. But now that you mention that, that makes perfect sense because if your country is so good and you already speak English and there's no need to get a better job, why learn a language for most people? It wouldn't really incentive, it's not an incentive. So I think it really filters out people who are really interested in languages. If you create a polyglot community, people who join are genuinely interested in languages.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think that the thing about polyglot community, or for example, that meetup, most of the people who come found out about our events is through the meetup app. So now we have also have Instagram and Facebook account, and we're making a website, but still, like, most people see it through the app. And when they see the word polyglot, Stockholm polyglots, by default, these people are interested in language learning and also open to learn new languages. And we also try to focus on the fact that it's not about the amount of languages you speak, but the wish to learn languages, not because you have to, but because you simply have an interest to.
Hmm.
You have a passion just for the learning new things, learn languages and new culture, all this. So I would say that that's a unique thing here in our group, that I
Yeah,
feel that there are a lot of a big level of openness among the
yeah,
people who come to these events.
yeah. And also, I wanted to ask you, so you're involved in many other things as well as music. Was it music or salsa and other
Yeah, yeah,
groups? And you said you connect better with people from polyglot community, and what are the reasons, if so?
yeah. So I've been, well, since before, since I was younger, I always liked to stand on stage, play guitar, sing, and played in the bands. And then I started to do salsa dancing, and I was in a group. We performed on festivals and danced a lot of social dancing on different places in the world when I travel. And I love that. And I love to connect with people with the same passion. But somehow the people that I've met through the polyglot communities have felt
Hmm.
more like family, because it's something, it feels like we have shared the same hunger for learning new stuff about ourselves,
Yeah,
about the world, language learning, and all this, which I feel is a unique thing
yeah,
um, in this kind of community. Although I might meet a person like that while dancing salsa or singing or playing guitar, but the probability is much lower, because
yeah,
simply
yeah,
this is a polyglot community, which people are love learning language and going in. And many of those from the polyglot community, as we say, are musicians, like play instruments or
musicians.
like to sing
Yes.
or dance, something
Mhm.
creative. So I would say that that's more like probable for me to find, like, to
Yes.
find these kind of
Yes.
people in the community.
I agree. And yeah, is that the reason why you're so passionate about languages, connecting with people?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, for sure it is. And I also, as I said, when I started learning Spanish in school, I felt like I was in a new world, and I was, also you find new things that maybe you didn't know you were, or you go into different, like, not personalities, but you find stuff, and also about yourself and about how you get a different perspective of things. I don't know. I just like the whole process of
Yeah,
finding out new things through
it's a
language.
beautiful thing.
And yeah, the connection is, yeah, the connection, as you said. I really, when you speak to one in their language, and then they get they didn't expect you to do that, and you can
Yeah,
even have more of a really deep or interesting conversation about stuff that you would never be able to do if you wouldn't speak their
exactly.
language. That's
Yeah,
also like a
yeah.
great feeling.
So do you have any other languages that you would like to learn?
Yeah, so last 2 years I've been learning Arabic. Like, I chose Egyptian dialect, because I after first I started with formal, like the standard Arabic, the Fusha. But then I wanted to, since I like to communicate to people, I quickly tried to find a dialect where people were using. And then I heard that or read that the Egyptian dialect is that what most Arabic speaking people will understand due to media and all these movies and all these things. So I started actually to go to Egyptian Swedish uh, language exchange, like
Wow.
a language cafe that they had specific with that. They it was just for maybe a half a year, then they for a year, and then they it dissolved. But through that, I found new people, Egyptian people that I got friends with, and so I also went to Egypt and traveled around there for a week and 1.5 week,
Wow.
2 times already, like one year ago and the year before that. And yeah, Arabic is very interesting language also. And I
Mm.
also started a little bit with Finnish some year ago
Yeah.
because that was just to find if there's any similarity between Hungarian and Finnish, because I
Mm.
know, as you know, that they're in the same language family, the Finno-Ugric, but the distance between those two languages are very big. So you will not really get almost no benefit from learning Hungarian already, but the
Oh,
grammar structure reminds of
yeah.
each other. Yeah, a little bit of that. So, but yeah, Arabic, I would like to say that I want to like focus more on that, learning more and talking more,
Mm.
practicing more, I think. But it takes time. Language learning is
Yeah.
it's like marathon. It's
Yeah.
not a sprint, I think. So
Yeah. And would you like to learn any Asian languages in the future?
uh, it's a good question. Uh, But which Asian language would you say would you recommend to learn? I
Um,
traveled along the I did a Trans-Siberian Railway, and I did it from Moscow. I went to train to uh, Beijing, so through Russia, Siberia, Mongolia, and to China.
oh,
And that
wow.
was just before I felt that I my Russian was good enough to be able to start with another language. And I was actually starting a little bit with Mandarin Chinese. But
Hmm.
after like 1 or 2 months, I just thought that, uh, I don't know if it's so much about the difficulty, but rather that I felt like, well, here in Sweden, uh, because when I'm learning a language, I want to try to see myself where this language would fit into my daily life.
Hmm.
And then I thought that Arabic would much make much more sense for me, especially as a doctor and a lot of patients and a lot of people here in Sweden who are Arabic
Hmm.
speaker, who are, you know, those might not speak Swedish or English, and also that uh, that actually Tigrinya is as my language of my parents. That's a Semitic language. It's related to Arabic also, so that will also be a little bit beneficial. But
Hmm.
for now, no. But it would be nice in the future to learn
Yeah.
an Asian language.
Hmm.
The language I speak are already quite different language groups already, like
Yeah.
Hungarian,
Yeah.
and yeah, Russian and Spanish and Arabic. So they're different language group already. But yeah, it's true. I don't have any of this Asian language group.
Yeah, but Korean is definitely a very hard language to learn. Korean is, yeah, I think one of the most hardest languages to learn. But
Hmm.
yeah,
The sounds
and
also
then
difficult, right? Or and
sound, grammar, vocabulary. Yeah, I don't really know because I've never learned Korean because it's my native language, but people say it's hard, and I can understand why it's hard because there are stuff
yeah.
that I can't explain as a native. Like it's so obvious to me, but for foreigners, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, stuff like that.
Maybe I have to find some Korean artists or music that I would
Yeah.
get interested in. I
Yeah.
know K-pop is not really my favorite music, but I'm sure
Yeah.
there are more than that.
Yeah, there's a lot more than that. So, yeah, I have more questions, but due to time constraints, we will stop here. And thank you. Thank you so much for your time. It was a very interesting conversation we had. And I hope to see you in other polyglot events.
Thank you, Judy. It was very nice.
Thank you.